first meeting for 2018. And first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Minutes of the November 6th meeting. Is there a motion to approve them?
I'm so moved.
Is it second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved as written. Minutes of December 4th meeting. Any additions or changes? Is there a motion to approve? There's a motion to approve. Second? Somebody second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. So the minutes are approved from November and December. First item tonight is 145 King of Prussia Road, which is Penn Medicine.
Kathy, I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay. Let the minutes reflect that Charlie Falcone is recusing himself. Mr. Falcone.
How's it going, Kathy? Happy
Good.
New Year.
Thank you.
So last time we were here in front of you, there were some uncertain items as part of our plan, and the most important being the passage of the PLO amendment by the Board of Commissioners. Since that point, the Board of Commissioners have taken action and have passed the amendment to the PLO that really allows this project to move forward. You remember the last time we were here, we had 2 review letters from your consultants, from Amy and from Roger, and those were based on that ordinance being passed. So kind of the uncertainty of that is now behind us, and we turn to those letters. We walked through them at the last meeting, and there were some items we had to address. Since that time, we've had the opportunity to meet with Township staff and its solicitor and go through our responses, and we've prepared a letter which is dated January 4th, that I hope you all have. You'll note that virtually all the items contained in the letter are will comply. So as we went through the items with staff, any items that were not will comply, we discussed the waivers that we would need. We discussed the necessary traffic improvements that would be part of our project, and we've come to an agreement on those with respect to what staff would like to see. Obviously, this commission and the board is the ultimate say. But from where we stand, we believe if you look at the response that we've given, we're in a good spot. We're basically will comply. So we would ask, I guess you could talk to your consultants, but we have with us tonight our consultants as well, if there's anything additional that we want to discuss. But based on the last meeting we were here, we left, addressed the comments, and are in a position now where it's basically all will comply.
Are you asking for any waivers?
There are some waivers in here, and I could actually, maybe, Mike, do you want to walk through the waivers? I'll give them to our engineer, but they're
Okay.
noted here.
Thank you. Good evening. A few of the waivers we discussed at the last meeting, and I think they're noted again in both Roger and Amy's letter. But the one...
Excuse me just 1 second.
Sure.
Trish, could you see if they can put the screens on? Thanks. Go ahead.
The first one would be for survey within 500 feet of the parcel. Talked about that last month.
And you're using an aerial photograph?
We'll use an aerial.
Okay.
And the second one being plan size, which again is a very typical one.
What size plans did you want to use?
We have,
The ones that you've given us so far?
yes.
Okay.
We would reduce them for recording, which is what we typically do. But otherwise, we think that's the most readable for construction
Yeah.
purposes.
Mhm.
And I think that's it. It comes down to a traffic waiver. Let's see here. Okay.
What
And
is
then-
the traffic waiver that you wanted?
Specifically, the township ordinance requires a level of service C for traffic. There's a number of intersections that aren't C today. and it may not even be possible to ever get them to a C. What we have done, we have met the standard of care for PennDOT for the whole region. We've improved all the study intersections or got them up to where they are in existing. So we're asking for a waiver from that specific requirement. That said, we are improving the traffic. We
Okay.
just won't achieve a level of service C.
All right. Any other waivers?
That's correct, Mr. Falco.
All right, thank
That's the
you.
only non-substantive waiver there.
Okay.
Or substantive waiver, I should say.
And you have met with the township staff, all branches of the township staff?
We had kind of an all-hands-on-deck meeting and went through kind of all their, the letters as well as other thoughts that they had on the plan, and that's what brought us kind of here tonight. We believe we've got support of township staff. We're in the current state that we are.
All right. Any comments, questions from the board?
I think our biggest question last time was the level of service C, and the idea that, are you making it better, or are you just trying to prevent it from getting as worse as it could get? And what's Amy's perspective is specifically on that particular level of service? I'm just interested to know.
What's typically done is if there's a degradation based on the impact from the project, that's what needs to be mitigated. And that level of service, that C, isn't even out there existing right now. So to require an applicant to come in and bring improvements to a site, if I'm correct, I don't believe that you legally can require that of an applicant. So there are some discrepancies in the SELDO that should be eventually addressed somehow with a ordinance revision. But this has come up a couple other times too on projects. So I think that the improvements that have been offered by the applicant are significant and actually outweigh bringing that level of service C into the area.
Skip, you had some questions?
Yeah, I was unable to attend the December meeting, but in reviewing the latest letters and the will complies, a couple of issues occurred to me. I see that you're committing or will comply in the widening of the SEPTA train station driveway, and that one of the comments that came up was that people illegally or incorrectly or whatever park on that driveway now. So it struck me that if you were going to go to the trouble of widening the driveway 5 feet, that maybe you could widen it 10 feet and put those parking spaces in as official parking spaces. Because the other thing that to take into account in the long-range planning for this site, it certainly, you know, is part of the traffic piece, but secondarily, that line, that train line, the P&W, which I still want to call it, is going to go to King of Prussia. And you're going to have more demand for people parking there rather than driving under the tiny little bridge that we have under the R5 to get to King of Prussia. Maybe they can use the train, and if they have a place to park, that would work really well. Might be a little tiny revenue source for SEPTA, too.
Well, we have agreed to widen it, and essentially we were agreeing to widen it as it serves as a driveway, and the code requires us to make it 25 feet. There was a lot of discussion last month of whether or not it should be widened to the 25 feet or actually kept that narrow to try to prevent parking and things like that. So we can look at the different ideas of either signing it for no parking and going that route, or the option. So we will need to coordinate with SEPTA and, you know, with the bus stop, which was one of the conditions, as well as just developing next to them. So we can take that under
And
advisement.
again, I wasn't here, but
Yeah.
if people are already doing that, and maybe make it legal instead of just trying to prevent it, because that parking is going to end up in your hotel lot.
Yeah, I think that we would have concerns over the volume of traffic that would, utilizing it as our entrance to have those cars there. But it's something that we can look at in the study.
That's one. The other thing, when you do your, unless you've already done it and you've submitted it to the township, you talk about transit positive events, such as the companies purchasing, monthly passes and things like that for their employees. Just wanted to comment that under the new tax law, that no longer is a deductible event. So if it's part of a piece, that piece is broken and you have to get rid of it, I guess. See, I had one other thing. The last transit thing, I see comments about improving foot traffic within the site, better sidewalks, connection to the trail. Can you, and is it appropriate at this time to ask you to enhance the connection between the SEPTA light rail and the R5 station? I know there's a way to get there now, but I don't think the signage is that great. Maybe the lighting could be improved. This is a transit thing that really makes a lot of sense.
So we've looked at that. So our plan, the plan that was submitted, actually will take a hard surface path to the Blue Road, under the Blue Route tunnel that's currently being used. That pathway under the Blue Route.
No, I mean the heavy rail station.
And so when we were last at the meeting, we didn't have a sidewalk on that side, so we've included a sidewalk there. So it's going to come down and it's going to connect to that existing sidewalk on the property next door to ours, which will then continue it right up to the R5 station along the frontage of the property. So there'll now be a way to traverse on sidewalk to the R5, basically all the way from 30 as a result of the sidewalks we're putting in.
And I noticed that you probably did will comply for at least 8 or 10 signage changes. So could you consider some signage that directs people to the R5 station?
We can consider that. We'll look at what we can do on site.
Skip, were you asking if they could connect the R5 and the Norristown high-speed line?
Well, that would be a fantasy of the future, but not.
I thought that's what
not-
you were asking
that
for
would
a
be-
pedestrian
That might cost as
walkway.
much as building the hotel and twice.
I thought you
I'm
were asking
not
to
saying that. I
connect
meant
the two
the
trains, the way
pedestrian.
it came out. Okay.
The
So you're
pedestrian
just saying
connection.
more pedestrian access to the R5?
Or enhancing it. Right now, the people do go there somehow, some way, but they have to go out to, the street and things like that.
Okay, because the way the question came out, it sounded like you wanted connection between
No.
the two train lines.
No, that would be
pedestrian. Okay.
great, but that's not.
That's the way the question sounded.
Well, if the
That's why.
stations were in the same spot, and you could just somehow have the tracks one under the other or whatever, that would be a different story.
Okay, I just wanted to get
But I'm not asking for
that
that.
clear. Thanks.
And I didn't see this, and maybe it's already been discussed. I'm just, for the public's sake and my own, I guess, real estate taxes on the hotel and the office, that's not a payment in lieu or anything like that. That's a perpetual based on use, unless,
Yeah, the whole site is going to be paid based on use.
okay.
So there'll be no exemption sought for anything on the site.
Just to clarify, I appreciate that.
Yep.
That's all I had.
Just skip, to be clear, it's not going to be a pilot either. It'll just be taxed as any other use would be taxed.
Okay.
In other words, property tax. We appreciate that as residents. Any other questions? Skip, did you have something? Yes.
I think I mentioned this in the last meeting. Do you guys, are you considering any kind of shuttle service between the stations, the rail stations and your complex?
We're not there yet. I'm very focused on the land development, but Penn has shuttles at other locations. But that's an operations thing that we're just not there yet.
I just think it would be a big miss not to have that kind of service. And even in your land development, if you have to make something work for that, I think that it's going to be well used and it's going to help the behavioral
Traffic.
issues.
And an additional comment on that, because I'm involved with the King of Prussia Business Improvement District. I don't know, I can't identify it for you now, but if you want, I can direct you to the person who could answer the question. We were able to get a grant that funds the connector that you see at the Wayne Station for basically about 90% of the cost for the first 3 years.
There's also the opportunity to partner with other businesses who use the shuttles, because they're not heavily in demand, but there are a few daily riders on some, like the GSK shuttle. The people, they rely on it, but there's plenty of space. They could be, offering spots, if, look to the other people who are running shuttles and see if you can just tag team with them.
Anybody else down here? No? This end? Questions?
One quick question. I agree with what Amy stated about the level of service C. Amy, do you have any additional suggestions that would enhance the plan that they put forward?
Well, what do you mean by enhance?
As far as improving traffic with the plan that they have in place, did you have other ideas that you?
We have, and we've had some discussions on improvements, and I'm not sure how far along things are or what's been formally presented, but a lot of the improvements that were identified with the biomed site for the traffic adaptive system, using that to assist getting the traffic to move through the area more efficiently, is something that's been talked about pretty predominantly on this project.
So I don't know whether it's appropriate how that unfolds. If we recommend a waiver of that requirement, do you then lose leverage for negotiations down the road? What are your thoughts on how we should move forward?
So I think, can I maybe try
Yeah,
this?
that would be
Please do.
great.
So through this process, what Penn has done is they've engaged with the township to come up with what we believe to be a really kind of extensive list of improvements that we would accept as conditions as part of our land development approval. So we've worked with Amy on those, we've worked with staff, with your solicitor, and we've come up with that list, which when we present the plan to the commissioners, there'll be a list of proposed traffic improvements that we've agreed to accept as conditions. So they've already been established, they're being fine-tuned, but they're very extensive. They follow very closely with the biomed improvements, all the adaptive signals, we've agreed to do all of those. So there is a laundry list of improvements that we've run by your staff. They've blessed, we've agreed to, and we are hopeful that that's going to be really what is tied to this development. They're significant improvements.
So would it make sense for us to recommend that waiver in conjunction with those
Sure.
agreed upon
We have no
traffic
problem with that.
improvements?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
We've made that commitment to your staff, and we are going to stand by it. So,
Okay,
yeah, no
thanks.
problem there.
All right, staff, any questions or comments? Is everybody in agreement with what has been said so far?
Yeah, Mrs. Bogosian, absolutely. We did have that, we've had several meetings, and what the applicant's attorney noted is correct. There's very significant traffic improvements that will be done. It's been reviewed by staff. Details on everything will be worked out as we go to final, but staff is fine with what's been proposed.
Great, okay, thank you. Any public comment?
Hi, Nick
Hi,
United,
Nick.
the school district. Not really comment, but more clarity. Dave, can you go over to some extent what traffic improvements we're talking about? I'm familiar with the adaptive system, so you don't have to go through the adaptive, but particularly along King of Prussia Road, and particularly as it relates to Raider Road and the left turn signal into Raider Road going, that would be northbound? Okay.
So based on feedback from years ago, when we designed the site, we lined up the main driveway for the site with Raider Road. We've committed to signalizing that intersection and having left turn lanes into our site and into Raider Road on northbound King of Prussia Road. And better pedestrian accommodations at that signal with pedestrian signals and crosswalks and handicap ramps and all that. So that intersection is a key piece of this. In addition, as you approach it from the north, we're widening onto our property for a right turn lane into the site. So the through lane really is just for the through traffic. The left lane really is just for the lefts onto Raider. And it should improve operations at that whole site. And the most notable from Raider Road is the exiting traffic on Raider Road really, our analysis showed that that was problematic at times, but it will have a signal, right? So it will, every 60 seconds, have a green light for the exiting traffic on Raider Road.
Okay, so as we're going northbound,
Yes.
From Lancaster Avenue, perhaps this would be better if we can see it on a plan. You will have a right turn lane into the site,
Yes.
all right? You'll have a through lane,
Yes.
as well as a left turn lane at Radar Road, which will be signalized.
So,
Correct.
Nick,
And
here's your right turn lane, here's your left turn lane into Radar Road, here's your through lane.
Yeah, and Amy, also, the concern of the school district there on that left turn lane is to have sufficient stacking.
We haven't come to an agreement on what the length is. That's one of our comments from the TIS that they need to address. They need to look at what the queue length that is needed on that. And then also, they're going to take traffic, traffic counts at the bus yard, because there's going to be a back-to-back left turn lane there, and to make sure that neither of those overlap or encroach on each other. So those are some things that still need to be worked out. So we're still kind of in the preliminary on that.
Yeah,
But
particularly if concern is that queuing there at
Yes.
that left turn lane.
Definitely worried about the lefts going into Radar Road, and making sure that that left turn lane is adequate to handle the buses coming through there. And then also making sure that the opposing lefts into their site do not create any kind of conflict with the bus yard that's further north on.
Okay, and then coming southbound, as we're going past the bus yard, will be one lane, is that accurate? Or would there be a deceleration lane into the high school at all, or?
It looks like there's a right, is that, no? I don't think there is widening
We're
there.
not proposing any roadway improvements on the school property.
Okay.
Right, so right now, it's just a through lane southbound that you can make the right from.
Mr. Cornelia, so I was at the school district facilities meeting tonight for the Radnor Tap Trail, which somewhat is involved in this, and did offer, and will still, if at any time, and we will make sure that the school district gets a chance to meet with the applicant and get more detailed information with your facilities folks or that subcommittee.
Yeah, and that's what we're really looking for, is to be able to meet with the applicant to discuss this as well, and with the township staff as well.
We can set that up at everybody's convenience, and we'll host the meeting and make sure that any information the school district needs, you will have.
Okay, and then going, just out of curiosity, then going southbound as we're approaching Lancaster Avenue, how many lanes will we have at that intersection, and are there turn lanes there as well, or additional turn lanes?
So they're the dual lefts now, and there's a single right. So southbound, we anticipate that remaining the same. The difference at that intersection is there's the dual lefts coming from Lancaster Avenue onto King of Prussia Road, but the receiving lanes are very short, so they're not utilized as two fully effective lanes. So we are lengthening that receiving lane to make those lefts more even, make better use of the infrastructure that's already there. In addition, with those two receiving lanes on King of Prussia Road, on the south side of the intersection coming off of the Blue Route, there's a dedicated right turn lane. We're going to change that to a shared right through lane. So you could have two throughs also using that extended lane. And that extended lane is going to come all the way up to Radar Road. So that will facilitate the use of both lanes either coming through and making the left. But southbound, we took a close look at whether an additional right would benefit anything. And really, the lefts are what dictates the green time. So there's plenty of green time for the right turns. So we didn't think adding a right turn lane there would achieve anything, except add more impervious and have to lengthen the culvert there. Right.
Yeah, in the school's problem.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
But to no benefit. Like, we don't want to widen to no benefit. We have a lot of improvements.
Remember there was a right turn lane in the biomed plan there onto Lancaster Avenue. That-
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you were saying.
I was saying there was a right turn lane, I believe, at that intersection of the high school and 30 and King of Prussia.
At the high school?
On the old biomed plan I'm referring to.
Okay, into the high school side?
No, I'm sorry.
Down at
Yeah,
Lancaster?
going south at Lancaster Avenue.
And we looked at that, and we felt that it was more important to have the dual left turn lanes and make sure that we have the alignment coming into the site better than it is right now.
Okay.
That was what we had decided. There's a lot of overlap, for, if I remember right, we had quite a few discussions about this offline, talking about that right turn, and what it is there's an overlap with the eastbound left turns coming into King of Prussia, and it allows for that right turn to continue running rapidly out of the intersection. So that's why we decided that it was a better thing to have those dual left turn lanes and then allow for the additional lane, I believe, coming off the ramps. Is that what it is, coming into the site?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
With that left turn lane modification on eastbound Lancaster, had you considered going to one longer left turn lane rather than the two? Because most people, as you pointed out, they're not even able to get over to that lane, allow more of the traffic to get through the intersection so that the people could, exiting 476, get across and make that left on King of Prussia. Because there's that conflict that they can't get across the Route 30 traffic to get to that left turn lane.
Okay.
So you're extending the left turn lanes to make them more accessible, but if you were to clear some of that traffic, they might have a better chance of getting across behind the queue.
Yeah, so to be clear, we're not extending the left turn lanes on Lancaster Avenue.
Oh, you're
We're
not?
extending the receiving lanes on King of Prussia Road from the left turns.
Oh,
You
so you
follow what I'm
can't
saying?
modify them on 30.
Right. So the dual lefts on 30 right now, and you kind of alluded to it, that it's not evenly utilized. And we think part of the reason is the receiving lane is so short that people know they need to merge back into one lane. So they stick in one lane in the left turn lanes, right? But when we extend the receiving lane on King of Prussia Road, there will be two lanes receiving those lefts all the way up to Raider. So there's, several hundred feet for those to merge in. So we think it'll make better utilization of both lanes for that left turn moving off of Lancaster Avenue.
Okay, so the conflict between the traffic that's trying to basically go from one side all the way to the left turn,
Yeah.
you're not really able
that-
to
that we're
impact
not
that, because
addressing.
that is a big bottleneck.
I say we're not
That's a
addressing
PennDOT
that-
issue,
We're not
right?
addressing that with infrastructure improvements. We have committed to partnering with the township to put in adaptive signals.
That may help.
Which may help, right? It's hard to quantify exactly how adaptive signals help,
Yeah.
but all the evidence is it does.
Okay,
So-
yeah, because where the cars are coming in, they can't actually move across until it gets cleared, and it's cleared for only a few cars, and then it builds up for the next light
So
cycle.
one of the other benefits, as I mentioned, coming off the blue route right there on the northbound ramp, we're changing that right turn lane to a right through. So if we can give, because of the additional infrastructure we're putting there and the additional throughput of the northbound traffic, that might enable us to give more green time to Lancaster Avenue. We're not there yet, right? We're talking about the infrastructure improvements. We're still working on
Well,
the-
clearly you're aware of the issues, so.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Are there any other comments from the audience? If not, the board, everybody's good? Okay, is there a motion from the board?
So we're moving for preliminary land development, correct? Okay, so I can recommend approval of a preliminary land development application and associated waivers with the note that the level of service C could be recommended in conjunction with other improvements as discussed with staff, or in the process with staff.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no? Okay, so it's approved.
Thank you all.
You're welcome.
See you in a month.
Trish, I just noticed something I missed on the November minutes. It's a minor thing, but Matt Golis isn't our traffic engineer. Unless something's happened that I'm not aware of. No, I'm not. Okay. So we'll just scratch you off of there. Under absent, traffic engineer Matt Golis.
Matt does know traffic engineering pretty well, but
Next item on the agenda is 415 Maplewood Road. Are the applicants here? I think, oh, here, I have the handheld mic if you need it. There you go.
Good evening. My name is David Submergent Builders. We are submitting and have submitted a plan for 5 twins to be developed and built on Maplewood Road in Wayne.
Would you like to go through anything on that, explain it, or anything like that, or should we just go into the letters?
Well, currently the property is used as residential and commercial. Most of the property is currently paved and is pervious surfaces. Our proposal is to remove all of the existing structures and all of the existing paving and put in a road and develop 5 twins.
And that's a private road you're putting in?
It's a private road,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Then why don't we go to the staff and let them go through the letters on this? Roger, would you like to start with your letter?
Actually,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
What might help and not have us here all evening is, and I'm sorry, my name is Ted Jackomis.
Can you spell your last name, please?
G-A-C-O-M-I-S. I'm president and owner of Edward B. Walsh and Associates, who prepared this plan for David. And if it's all right with staff, we can, a lot of the items we can say we just complied. We do need some waivers, and they're really the only ones I would like to discuss with you tonight, which is about a half a dozen of these comments versus going through every item, if that's okay with you. But
Okay,
if you'd
so-
rather go through each item, if you need an explanation.
Not necessarily.
Okay,
What are the, let's start with the ones you're having problems with
okay.
that
Well,
you wanted to discuss.
The first thing is, I believe everybody knows the history of this plan. It's been around a little while, and it was 16 units, down to 12, and now down to 10. As David explained, the property is used as both residential and commercial venture. A paving business is operated out of this property. David, is the equitable owner, and this 2.171 acres is made up of a bunch of small parcels owned by the D'Antonios. And in addition, David bought one other parcel off of a adjacent owner to make it 2.191 acres. He has met with Steve and staff to discuss a lot of items, and that's how the changes came about and the resubmittal of the plan back in October. As far as Roger's and Amy's letters, the items we would like to talk about is item number 6, which talks about 2 parking spaces must be provided for each dwelling unit. The ordinance has another requirement for every 4 units you would provide another off-street parking or on-street parking space, which would equate to 3 more spaces than what we are providing. We're asking for a waiver of that requirement because this is a private street and there are 2-car garages and they have driveways in front of them. I can.
What is the length of the driveways in front of them?
Okay, they vary from 15 to 18 feet. You are correct, not all of them would be able to have a car in front of it without blocking the sidewalk. The cars would not hang out into the private street. The private street itself is proposed to be 24 feet wide, curved, which again, you know, if there's that occasional party or whatever, you know, people would be able to park on one side of the road and still allow ample room for, you know, safety as far as, you know, any kind of vehicle that would need to get through there. And in addition, we have two entrances to this project. We're basically utilizing the existing driveway entrances out onto Maplewood and Highland Avenue.
All right, let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
I found in the past that many people, especially in smaller houses, do not utilize their garages for cars necessarily. They put stuff in it, extra storage, turn it into a gym, whatever. I don't think you can fully count on 2 cars parking in the garage all the time. Maybe some people will sometime, but I think a good portion of them will park outside. And you already have a problem there in that 15 feet is not enough to park the car on. Mm-hmm. So, and then lots of times there's more than 2 cars in a family if there's teenage children or something like that. What is the square footage of the twins, per twin?
Approximately 3,000.
3,000, so that's a good size. I think you need more parking there.
Yeah, I mean, if you object to that, we can fit the 3 parking spaces that are required by ordinance.
I would like to see more than that,
Yeah.
actually. And I know then you have an impervious problem,
Yeah.
which we'll go into later, but I really feel you're going to need the parking.
Okay.
Okay, and I have another question, just, it's off that subject, but the zoning on this says 50 feet for front yard setback, as I recall. And are you measuring the front yard setback from Maplewood Avenue back to where the houses start? Or are you measuring from the front of the house to this private street that's going through?
We're measuring from the public streets and not the private street.
How's the staff feel about that? You want me to ask it again?
No, I,
Okay.
oh, that's,
Because
This
it's a
is
street.
intended, if I can just
Yeah.
clear up one thing, it's intended to be one parcel after this. The homes will be, and correct me if I'm wrong, the homes will be owned sort of as a condominium arrangement. So they're not individual parcels, so the setbacks are taken from the perimeter of the
Okay, I
of the
understand.
property.
All right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no.
Okay.
No,
Let's
continue.
get further feedback from board members here. Anybody else have any comments on the extra parking?
I think we've just had a few plans come through where we've been very adamant about it happening, and I think that we have to be pretty consistent with the requirements.
How many extra parking spots are we looking for? Any comments? Does staff have any comments on that?
Kathy, I think you raised a good point, because I'm concerned about the parking for the actual residents, because with that size driveway,
Well, if I can try to
go ahead.
make this move a little quicker here. The comments that I have in my letter, one is that the parking spaces weren't dimensioned. I had the same concern that this board has, that there isn't enough sufficient depth in all of the driveways to hold that car. Under code, they can use the garage as the second parking space for the site. They're permitted to do that. I wanted to confirm the dimensions of the garage to make sure that it met the code for a parking space. And then they need that overflow parking, which I was just looking in my notes and I can't find it. I believe it's either 3 or 4 additional parking spaces.
For the whole site?
We'll clear that up, for the whole
Okay.
site, correct. So that would be the additional parking. And to follow up from some of the previous meetings we had with the applicant, the Township Fire Marshal requested that no parking be on that private road for fire access, to allow for fire access, because it is 24 feet wide, and if you park on that, you have trouble getting the emergency vehicles through there.
So the township would look at us to meet the code, but you are also asking us to go beyond the code? Or
If it's possible,
If it's
yes, and I
possible.
know you're very tight.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you cut down from 16 houses to 10, which is great.
Well, certainly something we can look at. We've discussed that with staff, and I know there's a couple things we might be able to look at. You could flip the sidewalk to the other side. One of the things we could do is we could flip the sidewalk to the other side of the street and allow the cars to have the full length of that parking space in front of the unit. There's a couple things we can do.
I have a question.
Sure.
Did you ever consider the houses that would affect would be 9, 10, 8, maybe 6, and maybe 4, to set them back a little bit and ask for some kind of dimensional relief? As a rear yard, you got 30 feet. You are on the back. Your backyard is the railroad, so you could then move the houses back a little bit and pick up the driveways, so that your driveway is 20 foot as opposed to 15 feet. And that'll give you 2 cars for each place, because you got double parking. Then you're going to you'll pick up 10 spaces, and you only need 3, you said?
Yeah,
So it's 3 additional.
Right, so I mean, I think maybe the zoning will be more amenable to that than what you're asking for the other way.
Yeah, we certainly would
You know,
entertain.
so you might want to take that suggestion.
Yeah, but they already took a credit for that.
9, well,
Question about this. Do you have any elevation studies, that we could see of what the houses look like with you?
We don't have it with us. We did originally submit this plan with triple units. And so now that they have gone to twins, we did not develop an elevation of that. We do have a plan in place, but not printed with us today.
I was just taken by your comment that these are 3,000 square feet. And I'm trying to figure out how they can be 3,000 square feet. Is that full basements, or is that part of the?
There's a small basement, and there are 4 stories.
4 stories.
But within the height requirements allowed by.
Do these units have back doors? I mean,
Yes.
it sounds funny, but do they have a back door?
Yes.
And that empties onto, I guess, unpaved earth?
I'm sorry?
Does that empty onto the lawn?
It empties onto a very small patio and then onto lawn.
The patios aren't indicated on the drawing that we have,
They're
though.
within the envelope, yeah, within the building envelope.
So it's a covered patio in some way?
Correct, on all of them.
How big are the patios?
I believe they're approximately 6 by 9.
Well, it strikes me that you're at 36% impervious, and if half these people don't add on to their 6 by 9 patio, I'll be amazed. And whether you intended it or not, the site will be over the impervious coverage within a year, and it's probably significantly. I think you have, even though we've been shrinking these, maybe these twins are now bigger than the triples in terms of total square footage?
They're actually smaller because the road was increased in width significantly.
Well, at
The sidewalks
36%,
went from porous pavers to non-porous pavers.
this isn't the first time this planning commission has said it, but it's still a lot of structure on a very small area. I mean, it's very dense.
Relatively speaking, with regard to the size of a townhome, this is about as small of a townhome that you can build. There is no other townhome in the township or twin that has a footprint this small.
I could imagine
It's
that.
it's a very, very small footprint.
I guess I was saying, and I know other applicants have heard this, that 16 was too many, 12 is too many, maybe 10 is still too many for 36, for the impervious cover, not because the houses haven't been shrunk to fit and all that.
Well, with all due respect, we don't believe so. We're within the guidelines, yeah, that are permitted, and we've been back and forth with this a number of times. So with regard to garage parking, if that's a permitted parking, we will want to use that garage as our parking. We certainly appreciate and will review the recommendation of moving the units back to gain additional driveway space. That's certainly, if that's something that would
As soon as you move the units back, you went over the 36%
well,
again.
we would have to make a modification to something else, being the units, and shave off of those. But I don't want to make assumptions that somebody's going to conceivably add any impervious coverage to a unit, because we can just assume that. This is going to be under an HOA, and typically HOAs do not permit, and they have a very strict guideline. So
True.
we don't believe that people will add to this as a whole, because the bylaws will state things like add additions or adding on or sheds or paint colors or changing siding or changing roofs. Those are all things that will be within guidelines of bylaws of an HOA, which will be governed by all the people that are purchasing homes here.
Okay.
And Mr. Kunda, if I can add to that, any additions or modifications to these properties once they're built requires a grading permit and approval from community development, and that would have to come through the homeowners association, since they are the owner of the overall property. So that would be reviewed, and if they would exceed the impervious coverage, it would be denied.
There's some do-it-yourselfers that probably don't come for the permits.
There are, but we can only do what we can under the regulations.
Skip makes a good point, though, like, when you're designing and think about how you're doing it, you know, if you set it up in a situation where people are going to obviously want more, you're just going to put them in a situation where maybe when they even come and look at the model, they won't, if they know they can add, they're not going to be satisfied with that. Think about how you can maybe make a little change here and there to what you're planning at this point, because it's doable. I'm not saying, you know, you need a larger outdoor patio space and a smaller house, but if you can find a way to make it so that people won't want to add more impervious in their backyard or whatever. If it's a walkout basement you're thinking of, then maybe they wouldn't anyway because it's covered. So I don't really know what, without seeing the elevations, it's hard for us to
One of the
give
things,
input on that.
because there is a homeowners association, and I've worked with a lot of these, they have really strict controls. I mean, you can't.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think anyone would really try to go around the regulations.
So, I
But
mean-
you want to set it up such that they don't even have that temptation.
We will, and we can do all kinds of things in the deed, and, you know, and right up front let them know there's absolutely no expansion on the unit here, obviously, but.
I have a question, a traffic-oriented question. If something happens where you don't have enough adequate parking, just say, it could be an event or it could just be in general, where would the spillover parking go? Would that go to Highland Avenue? Or would people just be looking for spots there? Or would people be using the Art Center parking? Because I was over there today and people were coming off the trail, going through your property, going up Maplewood. So people, you know, in other words, instead of, you know, coming off the trail and walking to another spot to exit, they were cutting through. So are you going to have like an opening to the trail from the back of your complex?
We haven't gotten that far with regard to what means of egress we would provide for the residents of these townhomes to the trail, but we would think that that would be something that would be very desirable for the residents of this
I understand that,
community to
I
use.
understand, but your neighbor, the art center, has open, I mean, they don't look at who's in their lot, and it's a big lot. It's the closest parking lot to this complex. If there's any street issues, and I think this is where the board is concerned, if there's any street issues, the art center is going to be the overflow for parking, especially if it's like, if there's a nice entrance into your place. So that's just something, it would worry me a little bit if people are concerned about parking and all of a sudden, you know, the thing's built, everything's sold out, and the art center has cars in it all night. I don't know.
I've got a question. So when I'm looking at this plan and I see this footprint for a building, what am I looking at? A real, do you have a design for these? Or is this just a?
We do have a design. We just don't have a modified elevation. The elevation that we have is with, and we presented that the last time we were here, the elevation that we have is for a triple. But we have a full set of floor plans.
Okay. And so, but how are you locating these buildings? Or they seem to be a bit random. Is there some intent behind this?
As far as them being staggered,
Yes.
that's strictly for architectural interests, so that they're not lined up in a row and look very sterile and plain. So they're staggered for architectural appeal.
Well, if you're designing them as twins, I mean, they could have a straight front on them.
We don't.
You're
for what we feel-
trying to make them look more like townhouses than twins, right? They're not supposed to look like a twin house. Okay.
All right, let's get back to what we were discussing here, which was parking. What's the feel of the board generally that,
I don't see how we could grant any kind of recommendation for a waiver on
yeah, we
parking.
need the
If I
parking.
can clear something up too, that's a zoning variance that they require if
So
they're going to
then
get
we're
away
not
from
even
that.
in
So
that.
Yeah.
there's no reason to even discuss it. They'll have to come back, go to zoning on that, so.
If you can somehow make the 15-foot driveways in the front 20 feet, that will help you. What's their option for pushing some of the houses back with the shorter driveways into that? That would be a zoning too.
Yeah, that would,
They need a variance
anything,
for
any
rear yard
construction in
zoning.
the setback would
Yeah.
require zoning
Okay.
relief.
Rear yard setback, you'd have to go to zoning to get that.
Okay, but you'd require the zoning for the other one too, so. All right, what's your next one?
Well, the next one's actually moving into the subdivision. land-
Otherwise, you're okay with zoning?
Yes.
And everything there? Okay.
Yeah. Everything else there we can explain to
Are they going to,
staff and the
excuse me,
consultants.
the number, what, the impervious, is it number 4? Steve, you had a comment about that?
I'm wondering if it makes sense for them to go to zoning and figure out the parking before we move forward, because it could change the whole plan.
But why don't we go through
But it could
their
change the whole
concerns?
plan, so
Yeah.
the concerns might be completely different.
Well, let's see what the other concerns are, and, you know, there's no point in having them go to zoning,
Yeah,
and then
the-
come back here and we have another concern. Let's go through,
The
what
other
the issues are.
4 or 5 waivers we want to talk about would be the same.
They'd be the same if you had to redesign this to accommodate the parking, and they got no relief at zoning?
If you got relief in impervious coverage, yeah.
all right,
It
so,
won't take long at all.
all right, go through your next ones.
Okay. I mean, it's like number 2 in the subdivision is to show significant features within 500 feet. We'd like a waiver of that, and we would show, present an aerial
Aerial,
map
yeah,
as a
that's
part of our-
generally what
Okay,
we've been doing, so that's not an issue.
that's,
You know, the only thing, when we're doing that, like, why are we're not asking that they have to be surveyed, we're just asking that they have to be shown. So can't you use the aerial map and show them?
yeah, and that's what we'll do.
So we'd like it, you know, with the plan all put together, not a separate aerial and then your plan on a separate sheet. Everything put together so we can see what's happening.
Yeah, we can do that, no problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, what's your next one?
Maplewood, this would be number 5
5,
Okay.
under the subdivision
in
land?
the subdivision
Okay.
section. The subdivision ordinance requires a 60-foot wide right-of-way. We're asking for a waiver to provide a 50-foot wide right-of-way. And right now, it's 33 feet. We would provide the extra right-of-way, and we did run this by staff. And along Maplewood, we will also provide, you know, a sidewalk and the associate compliant ADA ramps at our driveway.
What is the setback or the right-of-way on Maplewood presently?
Well, as I said, it's 33, it's 16 and a half from each side.
Just 33?
Yeah, 33. We would provide 25. So we'd go from 16 and a half to 25.
Okay.
And I believe your staff was okay with that because the rest of Maple would have is at that width.
Staff, you're good with a 25-foot right-of-way? Or 25 each side?
No, it's 25 one side.
Yeah.
He can't give away the other side.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I meant 50, 25, and 25.
I don't have a problem with it. It would be up to the board whether or not they would be okay with that.
My feeling is, and please jump in, board, if you don't agree with me, if the whole of Maplewood is 33 feet, making this larger doesn't help a whole lot, you know, to the 50, if they're giving us 25. Am I clear as mud on that one?
Kath, I think
What is the
maybe,
township
maybe
requirement for road?
the advantage would be the people going in and out of that development. So the extra couple feet maybe gives them a turning lane to make a left-hand turn off of Maplewood into it. So because you'd be given, I'm sorry, right. So you got 16 and a half feet on one side, and the other side you're going to have, you know, another,
25.
right, 25, right. So you're going to have a turning and a decelerating.
Is the applicant resetting the curb, or you're just granting the right-of-way?
Just granting the right-of-way.
See, they're not going to move the curb, though. They could, but
Well,
they're
you're going
not.
to put sidewalks in, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but they're going to put them in the right-of-way. The right-of-way is just going to be on paper bigger.
Well, that doesn't help.
No, right,
There's a
exactly.
cobblestone curb there already, and we were going to create the new sidewalk behind that.
So you don't get the benefit.
I mean, you're talking about a.
That's
you
like
know,
more responsibility and no pay.
No, I mean, there's 200 feet of frontage here, you know, to widen 200 feet of a road and have the rest of it. The road's actually 23 feet wide itself. I mean, our road, our private driveway is going to be wider than this road, so.
I'd like to comment on the plan. Can I do that, or am I off?
Why don't we
You wanna
go
stay
through with his,
focused on,
you know,
okay.
organization first, then we can do that.
Kathy?
Yes.
Just to call to the board's attention, if you're not completely familiar with this, is if you head up Maplewood in what would be the northeast direction there towards the corner of the plan, Ted, if you can run your finger up the plan there to the end of your property, that goes underneath the trail, not to the right, yeah. That goes underneath the trail, underneath the old bridge.
And what's the width
So,
under the bridge?
and that's, the width is, I don't know that off the top of my head, but it's pretty narrow.
So those areas aren't ever going to be wide.
Yeah, I don't know that you need a deceleration lane there if you're, normally people slow down to go through those bridges so that they don't hit somebody.
If
going through.
they're not going to widen it, why have it?
Yeah.
Somebody may get a bug one day and start taking their land after it's done.
Mhm.
I'm not into that.
Okay, so staff is good with 25 feet?
That definitely was our discussion
Okay.
with Steve.
Sorry, I was trying to pick up the width on Maplewood Avenue. Go ahead.
You are good with what they said, the 25 feet?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be good to know, like, to see all the way through, to see how that ties in with the underpass, because that would really,
Well, the underpass is right there.
is it at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the pavement is consistent throughout, and where is the edge of the opening of the bridge?
With the bridge?
Right at the end, right where it
Yeah.
says, if you look at the drawing, it's the railroad, where the railroad line is.
So There's no place for someone to walk off the road? The road is the edge of the structure?
No sidewalk
Correct.
underneath.
So the
Yes.
structure comes right up to the road? Okay.
Right.
So then, yeah, like, what can you do with it?
Yeah. Okay, so we're okay with that? All right. Okay, your next
Okay,
one?
the next waiver was number 7. On a local street, a 25-foot radii is required at an intersection. We had talked to staff about doing 15 feet on here because of, again, this being a private road. It's, you know, our driveway is going to be 24 feet wide, which will allow you to swing in there, no problem. So we're requesting a waiver to reduce that to 15 feet. And again, we did discuss that with Steve, and I know he's not here, and it was my understanding he didn't have a problem with that.
Are you doing it because
I
you-
have no objection to that.
Okay, you're good with that then? Board? I think it's,
Partially, yeah.
yeah. So, yes, we're good with that? All right.
How did we decide the width of the private road? Is that the minimum width, or is that just your preferred width?
No, we had a narrower width, and we were asked to increase it to 24 in discussion with your staff. And
Is that the minimum, do you know? Is that the minimum allowable?
No, it's not the minimum for a
Okay.
private road, but that was at the request, again, of the emergency management folks.
Okay, because that's what I was going to come to next, is this tighter radius, as long as the emergency folks are okay with that, then we shouldn't have an issue if you're putting a wider than required roadway through.
Okay.
Did you ever look at doing a one-way road in there? This is two-way, right?
Yes, it would. We could look at that.
I don't know if that helps you.
Is it one spot there, 22-foot wide, it shrinks?
No, that's an error on the plan. It's 24. Those were some old numbers that didn't get changed, sorry. The last waiver we were talking about is item number 16. And I'll go back and talk about a couple other minor things, but all driveways must be paved. And I believe the way the ordinance reads is it talks about an
16.
Yeah.
It's on page 4.
It talks about asphalt paving, and David would like to use brick pavers for all these driveways when he builds them, including the sidewalks, possibly, instead of concrete.
And how was the staff with that?
I believe the staff was fine with that, too.
Yeah, I don't have an objection. I don't believe the ordinance says paved, but it's got to be in a dust-free condition.
Okay.
So, I can look that up for you if you need the exact language, but I don't have that in front of me.
you're okay with brick paving?
But I don't have a problem with
Is that
the,
where he picks up his extra percentage impervious?
no, the brick pavers are still
Okay,
impervious.
I just, yeah. I was going to say, I didn't know the pavers were that.
The only other things I'll add, and actually, you know, if you have any other comments, we did run truck movement using your fire equipment, and we had submitted that, and we'll submit it again, so Roger has it. But we did show that a fire truck can make the turns through this development with no problem. As far as the one-way goes, yeah, we could make it one way. I'm not sure that would do anything, you know, if we made it one way and we were allowed to park all on one side. But then I'm not sure your emergency services
And I
would be
think
too
you would,
happy with that.
you'd be affecting some neighbors on Highland.
Yeah.
You can't one-way those people. You know, they'd have to go through your whole development from Maplewood if that was the way the one-way went.
Right. The other thing to keep in mind is what this property looks like now. I mean, it is almost 100% paved, and, you know, we're bringing it back. So I hear you when you say 16 might have been too many, 12 might have been too many. Is 10 still too many? There's like, you know, and I know you don't care about money, but, you know, the owners don't care whether we have 2 or 16 on it. They still want the same amount of money to buy this land. Obviously, Radnor's a great place to live, and even a unit of this size will, do well. And in my experience with homeowners associations, and I represent 6 municipalities in Chester County, and
Could you get a little closer to the mic?
yeah, I'm
please?
sorry. I represent 6 municipalities in Chester County, and the homeowners associations do a terrific job of making sure they don't add
Yeah.
anything. Yeah, I mean, I've seen them, the minute they do it, they're in court, and
Are we
it's
done with
taken
the
away.
waiver discussion?
Yeah, I'm done with the waivers. Anything else in these letters we feel we can
Go
comply with?
ahead, ask your question.
So,
No, I have a real concern about the layout of the houses. And as you drive down your road, you're for the most part going to, from house 1 through 8, you're going to see primarily pavement. It's all you're going to see. It'd be like, it's going to feel like you're living on a parking lot. Is there a reason for that?
How else would you expect them to get down the street?
Design it? I mean, what?
They're,
I mean, I'm-
they're very limited in what they can do
Yeah, but
space-wise.
I think what you're doing is creating a really negative place. You're going to drive, you're going to have all pavement in front of these houses. You know, I guess.
I don't know how to answer that quite truthfully, but normally you do
Well, I
have
think we
pavement.
should, as planners, as a planning group,
But
we
we're
should
not
be
doing their
legitimately
design.
concerned
Yeah.
about what the appearance of these places are. And to me, I think it's really quite negative to create this street and then just create a sea of pavement that a house is sitting on. It seems a little awkward. I mean, it could be
you
spread
don't
out,
have,
they could be
a fair-
redesigned, there could be 100 other things done with this. Pardon?
Could be 8 instead of 10.
Well, it could be, I don't even know what the dimension of this plan is. What is the dimension?
a 1-inch equals 30.
No, well, that's, no. What
The,
is
the
you're
envelope.
showing a floor plan. What is the dimension of the plan?
What's the width of the house?
This is about 22. Yeah, 22 feet wide.
By,
Who'll give you the exact? The one thing you're not seeing on here is the landscaping that will be.
well, I looked at the landscape plan, and there's nothing between these houses, so I'm not sure what you would show on the I mean, if you look at the landscape plan, you don't have any landscaping. Do you? I
It
mean, you
is,
can
it
turn-
is
please turn to
very,
the landscape plan.
it is very pavement-oriented because you're looking at that entire road plus those driveways. And I've seen developments like this, and it maybe isn't your best option for this lot, because if you were able to reconfigure it in a better way, the dollar value for the return would probably be a lot higher.
Yeah.
I mean, can you turn to your landscape plan?
Yeah. First of all, an architect laid this out who thought he did a great job, okay? And secondly, I highly.
I beg to differ. I mean, if you just look at house 2 and 3, I can't imagine backing up in that driveway
I don't know.
on a practical level. You would bump into your neighbor's car.
The unit size is 28 wide by 40 deep.
28 by 48?
28 by 40.
Why is it 28? That's enormous.
It's actually considerably smaller. Almost every townhouse in Radnor currently that's built in and around this area is 32 feet wide by 45 feet deep.
I think I beat it up.
I'm not sure, comparing it to other places, what that has to do with.
Well, I'm trying to put it into perspective. You're referring to this as being very large, and I'm trying to explain that it's actually considerably smaller than every other townhouse that's been built in the last 5 years in Radnor Township.
I have a
Look,
question.
I mean, so it
That's
doesn't
really
doesn't-
not going to make it a better design, just
Yeah.
because someone else didn't do a good one. I mean, I don't really think it's relevant either. I think we're not inclined to recommend any kind of waivers on a plan that, again, looks too dense. I mean, that's just that's our responsibility to the residents, because these will be residents of Radnor.
And my question is, so the existing residents, the existing houses that are being removed, where they sit, there's nothing on this plan, there's no buildings on this plan. Is that because you couldn't put some of this townhome structures on those sites where the houses that are sitting there now, they're basically on the street, the two big houses are on the street? Right. And in this plan, that's just vacant space, empty space. So what, is there a reason for that? Is it that I'm missing, or was your design issue just to push the stuff back off the street further?
Yeah, the idea was to have it all on the private road. Could units 9 and 10 turn and have
Well,
access to Maplewood?
Frankly, I think you're wasting some valuable real estate right on Maplewood, because all of a sudden, this whole dense issue starts to go away when you start to move, if you're able to pull some of the townhomes away from each other. To me, I don't know why this open space in this plan exists.
Just as a reminder, there's a 50-foot setback on Maplewood that would require those two houses to be back almost to the position where they are now.
Because
Right.
the two houses are non-conforming right now.
Correct.
Right, but
Correct.
is that a bad thing, given what we're dealing with on Maplewood, how it looks now, how a lot of houses are right on the road in that part of Maplewood?
Yeah.
That
sounds
again
like,
would require zoning relief.
I know, okay.
Again, what this board and I
They
think...
got to build the houses in the block.
Yeah,
They got to stay inside that block.
yeah. There is
So-
a setback, but what this township
they
needs to
don't?
look at is what's out there. And
Okay, let's let one person
Yeah.
talk, guys.
you know, if you look at, and I'm going to point to them, here's a house.
Can you get closer to the mic, please?
Hang on a second.
Sorry about that.
Here's an existing house. It doesn't conform to the setback. It's about 50% within the setback. Same thing with the house to the west. There's a huge structure sitting back here, next to the trail. These are commercial structures. They're not so great looking. Same thing with the structure that sits in the middle, which is pretty much non-conforming. And then if you look and follow the paving line through here, you'll see how much of this is paved. When somebody says what we're doing isn't going to look nice, well, maybe it's not ideal, but it's going to look a lot better than what's there. And and as you said, we've moved from 16 to 10. We'll go look at those things. Can we, get a variance to reduce that setback next to the trail area? I'm sure the people in front of us wouldn't want those setbacks reduced, but obviously, as you said, that might be a good idea. I think we can solve the parking problem. That's not a problem. Everybody has their own idea of what you're going to see there. We can do a better job landscaping if we haven't, to break that up so you don't drive down there and see a mass of paving. I don't agree with you that it's going to look that way. The curvature in that road and the moving back of the units, I think there's enough variety out there that it's going to look like it's going to be a very good job and a successful job. And David will, sell all these units.
I want to go back to...
Ways they're touching each other. I can't, just,
Well, they're twin houses. I mean,
well, that's your choice. I mean, you can make them other kinds of houses if you'd like.
Well, this is what we're presenting. So if you look at typically a townhouse development, it's one big parking lot with townhouses that surround it. So there is a break up here and a considerable amount of greenery in between the twins, and there's space in between the driveways. So they're not actually one driveway that's servicing both twins. There is a space in between that would be a combination of green, landscape, shrubs, and trees. Let me also make a statement of regarding the comment on this being something that's not well planned or well thought out. We've invested a great deal of money and time and have had multiple years to design a plan that we're very excited about. I'm in a position where I'm going to be making a significant investment in building $1 million townhouses on a street and on a parcel that currently is very, very unattractive and not at all an asset to the township. We feel that what we're going to build here, what we'd like to build here, is extremely aesthetically pleasing. We feel that offsetting these units and now creating twins offers a lot more space in between than the original plan of triples. So we wouldn't be approaching this and going through these measures if we felt that the plan was not a good one and that we would be able to market these and be very successful in selling them.
David, I agree with you. The property is an eyesore in its present state. But what I feel you need to do is you need to look at the context of this neighborhood, like where the housing stock is. It's on Maplewood, all the houses are on the street. I don't see any reason why you have to jam these townhomes back into the property this way. I think you can get 3 of those town units out on the street where those present houses exist now. It frees up a lot of space then your other units have even more space between them, and it's, I don't know, it just seems like something you should approach zoning with.
He can't move the houses up. He's at the line. He moves up 50, he's going to need.
There's not enough
He's got to go to
frontage.
zoning, yeah. And you're asking him, I don't know if we'll get all that zoning variance from them. You're asking rear setback zoning, you're asking front.
No, Charlie,
and he has a funny looking lot.
Couldn't he ask alternatively, say, we could do this, or if you grant us this relief, we could do that? In other words, ask for
But you still
column A
have,
and
you still
column
have to
B.
go in with a plan.
Right.
You know,
Well,
I mean, I don't know. I think that calling it an ill-advised plan, I have a hard time with criticizing other architects. I think the reason why he's got the between 9 and 10, or 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 is the road bends out, so he can't stick a house there because now he's too close to the front and too close to the back. So he's kind of limited as to the curve of the road. I think he's got a problem, but I'm not so sure. I mean, he already's come down from 16 to 10. I think that whatever shortcoming he has, he's got to deal with them at zoning. I don't know if that's our position.
I agree with you. Also, I don't think if it's $1 million townhouse, they'd want to be right on Maplewood Avenue. They want to be further set back from it. I know I would if I were buying it.
I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but if we're looking for 3 more parking spots, we might really not be looking at 10. We might be looking at 9.
Well, that's something they need to work out.
And 9, like I said, could look a lot different. So a lot of these things we're discussing could be very different if, depending on what zoning says about that parking. And I mean, I don't really know what you would show as your hardship if you were to put those within the setback. You'd be asking more based on the fact that there's an existing nonconformity, I guess. But the hardship being the shape of the property, I mean, that's really, I mean, I think it's not a bad thought.
Yeah, Regina, the thing about the hardship, okay, and the fact that they've been there before. Once he tears everything down, he's opened a new book. Everything's gone.
Right, but it's still standing, so
but it's
we're
not
there.
gonna-
We're there.
And
wanna clear-
again, to get his relief for rear setback, I'm sure zoning is going to ask for something in return, and it's probably going to be the reduction of the number of houses. So he's back to where he was.
Yeah, I want to clear something up. This isn't about criticizing someone else's plan. This is about reading the plans that are in front of me. And reading the plans that are in front of me would suggest that there's going to be a roadway with a lot of pavement bunched up in a corner. I'm just trying to help you. I mean, if I'm putting $1 million,
I appreciate
you're doing a significant investment. And aesthetically, this isn't the most, I mean, there's options here that are not being explored.
We believe we explored all the options, and we think this is an outstanding plan. So what we want to do is we want to address the concern and comments on parking, and come back with a revised plan that shows those parking spaces, and whether that's going to be with us reducing the size of the units or reducing a unit, we'll determine that. But I don't know if there's any real need to discuss the aesthetic opinions of this plan at this point.
Just the functioning too. I mean, you're backing out the
All
way, just the way you're backing out of those driveways, the functionality of it, you know, on that corner. And it's just difficult.
Let's hear from some in the audience right
Right.
now, if we could. Yes, ma'am, would you like to come up, please? Yes. Sorry.
The procedure is to come to the microphone, give
And we
us your
need to
name and
hear
your
you.
address, and go ahead and give your comments.
And if you could please give us your name and address.
All right, my name is Betty Phillips, and...
And just pull the mic
I'm
over to
sorry.
you a little bit.
My name is Betty Phillips. I am, I'm not a resident right now, but my parents' home, Russell Brown, it's at the intersection of Highland Avenue and Central Avenue, the private road that runs from Central onto Highland Avenue. And it's under trust right now, but I guess my concern is the traffic, it's the parking, it's just about everything, really. I can't even, for my family home, because our front is not on Highland Avenue, it's on Central Avenue. It's on that private road.
Can you point it out on the plan for us?
Sure.
Sorry, and you're facing, I guess it's south. Yeah. Okay, great.
But it's right there, here's the private road, this is Central, this has been a private road since I've lived there all my life, and, well, my parents have, but, and I did.
Oh,
moved
no.
away, but-
We need you on a mic. Is there a handheld mic there?
Sorry,
And then-
but I'll
okay.
go back. But yeah, but my name, my name is right now on the trust, and my sister's, Doris Hunter. And we're just concerned about what's going to happen as far as the private road. How's that going to affect our property? As far as how much of our property might be modified.
Let me ask you a question, miss.
None of your property would be modified.
You won't be any cutting into our
No.
front yard, or because that private road is not.
Wait a second.
I'm sorry.
This is being televised. We
I'm
had to
sorry.
have the audio.
I'm sorry, I'm not used
Okay.
to being on television, okay.
Smile.
Never wanted to be. Anyway, now, I just wanted to know how much of that is going to affect our front of our house. It's like, we have quite a bit of front yard there, and, it looks like it has to be widened, the road, isn't that true?
Is your driveway off of
Our
Central or off of Maple?
It's off of
Highland?
Central. We come in off of Highland Avenue, and that's the private road, Central, and then we have a driveway, which is
So
on
you
the
will
left.
be using Central to get
We'll be
into your
We'll be
property?
using it again, and, yeah, we always do.
Okay.
Yes. And before, when D'Antonio's owned the property, I mean, they used it, of course, for their, for their construction business, and Albert, he always took care of it. It is a private road, and it's never been dedicated, I believe, as a township road, so it's always been private, so we've always taken care of it. So I was just wondering, how is that going to affect the front of our home?
There would be no construction on your own property. You would maintain your rights of access, and you'd still be able to go out of there. And of course, this road now would be maintained by the homeowners association. who would take
Madam
care-
Chairman, if I may, because there's another gentleman here with a similar concern, and I think from what, if I may, ma'am, so what they're asking is what they consider to be their property today, what will happen? Whether, so the line on the paper shows that perhaps it is not their property, so that, ma'am, if I'm correct, you're wondering what's going to happen to the yard that they have taken care of and consider theirs. And I'm not speaking for the other gentleman, but I believe his concern, I met with him earlier, is very much the same. He lives in the house on the other side of the private driveway.
Okay.
There's a sidewalk.
All right,
that's
maybe
proposed.
you could address that. Is that road going to be widened? Is it going to be repaved? And your organization owns the road, correct?
Yes, David owns the road. Well, actually, D'Antonio owns the road right now, but he would own the road when he takes it over. And then the homeowners association, right now, it is basically a single driveway. Only one vehicle can pass. So it would be widened to allow 2 vehicles, and there would be a sidewalk installed along there. Okay, so that is what would happen. And it's cross-hatched on the plan, if you notice. And basically what that says is both you on, I would say, the west side and the other owner on the east side, which is Lewis.
Right, I believe that person is here.
Would maintain their rights to access.
All right.
We'd have to go back and look at the original rights as to whether they would become party to the homeowners association, as far as the maintenance of that portion of the road.
All right, let me ask you this. You said you're putting a sidewalk along there. Will that sidewalk be on their yard? What is currently, they think is their
Yeah,
grass or whatever?
Both of them are going to lose what they believe is their yard now.
Okay.
I mean, you're going from about a 12-foot wide driveway to a 24-foot wide.
Okay, so let's
driveway.
say roughly 6 feet on either side.
Yeah, and then sidewalk on the one
Okay.
side. Okay.
By the way,
Is it proper-
why
wait,
you would show.
second, please.
This is why you would show features within 500 feet, so you could have this conversation.
Okay, how about if we have one person talk at a time? Is it currently staked out so they can see where this is?
No,
Okay, is it possible to get that done?
yes.
Okay, and you will meet with the neighbors to let them know?
Yeah, we have well, we might not have your information, but we can, actually show them what's happening out there. Sure.
My family is living in the house now, so, I mean, you can contact my sister. She's living there right now.
Okay. You can sit down if you'd like. Why don't we have the other gentleman come up who's on the other side of the street there? And your name, please.
Good evening. My name's Louis Landrello, and I own the property at 257 Highland Avenue. My driveway actually dumps out onto Central Avenue.
Okay.
Maybe I'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
If that's okay.
There's a handheld mic there if you want to use it. Yeah. Is it on? It was on.
There it goes. No?
There you go. You got it.
Okay.
Okay.
My property is right here. It's 257 Highland Avenue. I purchased it in 1989. The family that lived there before me, there were 4 generations in there. They were the Falcones. They lived there. They owned the house for about 90 years. The house was built in 24. Mrs. Brown is across the street. Her house was built around the same way. My house actually faces Highland Avenue, and it is a twin. Like 416. 416 is a single home, but it actually faces Maplewood Road. The property was owned by Christopher Fallon, and he passed away in 1890. He owned all this property, the original lots. Around 1924, Amy Fallon, his wife, and her children subdivided this ground and made separate lots. And I'm going to show you a plan for that.
I find the history interesting, but is
Makes a
it
big
important
difference.
as far,
Very,
okay.
very, very
All
important.
right.
Okay, and here is Central Avenue, and here are the plans. The lot numbers on here, if I can get some. Oh, here we go. Here we go. This is Lot 1. Mrs. Brown's is Lot 2. And let me grab my list here so I get this right. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My lot is 6. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. No, this is 13, 14, 15, and 16. There's a question I'd like to ask Mr. Submergent if I can, because there's something I saw on his plan that's here. Did you purchase this lot here, Mr. Submergent? No, you didn't? So this is not yours? Okay. It looks like it's showing like it's on your ground, but no, okay. Okay. One of the things, here's a photo of the lots on a Franklin Atlas map. And it shows them exactly the way I said it. I have in the information that you guys received in your packet, there's something here from Garnet Fleming's. Okay, and if you look down on that, it says the applicant is proposing to construct parcels, to consolidate parcels and construct 10 townhouses on the site. This project is located in R5 district of the township. The proposed development includes the private road Central Avenue. The deeds for the property refers to Central Avenue as a private road, and together with the free and common use right, liberty, and privileges of the above referred to 40-foot wide road with ingress and egress of the same at all times hereafter forever, and in common with the owners, tenants, and occupiers of the other lots bounding thereon. Well, that's not that road, we have free, that road should not be touched, is what the way I feel. I mean,
Well,
because we are,
you are going to still maintain your access to it. It was never dedicated to the township, and what was not developed isn't necessarily maintained that way forever.
I understand, but the one thing that my house, the one thing that I really like about this house is that I could actually walk down on the Central Avenue, walk down Central Avenue, and go right onto the bike trail without trespassing on anybody else's land. Now, he's going to make this a private road and change everything, and I will lose my rights to go down Central Avenue and get on the bike trail.
But technically, you're trespassing when you step off of Central.
On the
Between the end of Central that you get off until you get on the trail, you're trespassing on D'Antonio's property.
No.
No?
Look at this plan here, sir.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That 40-foot
But that doesn't exist.
No, it does exist. It exists right now.
It's a paper road. So it was never dedicated, but it is somebody else's property. They're allowed to develop it.
Well, it's our property. The road is our property by what it says on the deeds.
No, you own what's adjacent to it.
It talks about a 40-foot wide road, and it says that we have free liberties to walk along that road and do what we want. And that's our egress and ingress and egress.
If I could just cut in, you don't own a portion of that road. You have an access easement.
Right. We don't own it, but we actually have the right to use it. So forever.
Well, I'm sorry. I just thought you said that you own a portion of that. It's just an access
all the
easement,
lot
just for
owners,
clarification.
All the lot owners have rights to that property, and we are lot owners. So I don't want my access cut off. So there's a problem.
Right.
I think it's like a deed restriction. So-
I'm not a lawyer, I couldn't answer that.
Okay.
I mean, you have a right to access it, but you don't have a right to determine how it's modified or anything. I mean, you have a right to access it from your property.
Right. Well, I don't know. It says forever there, you know? So we have rights to it forever, and now one person's going to come and take it. So I don't think we know the answer. Maybe it's got to be looked into. Sure.
Microphone.
But it's also like,
It's on.
oh, sorry. All right, it's, my concern is being cut in, the property being cut into, and no one's even mentioned it. So that's why I'm here tonight, because I knew from the, you know, from looking at it, our property has to be cut into and has to be modified and affected, and, you know, it's just a lot of, it's just, and we're not being told what's going on, so that's why
Well,
I'm here.
hopefully they will work with you and
Okay.
you will know what's going on.
Okay, I do.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, I see that they did offer they were going to give us a right-of-way so we can get into our driveways on their plan. So, but what I would like, there's a lot of other concerns I have too, but I think this is the most important. But what I don't want is I want to be able to walk over to the bike trail and
Okay,
maybe go through a
well, as I
gate.
recall, David, didn't you say that there was going to be a possible access to the bike path?
Yes, we would.
You're entertaining that thought?
We would look into having some access onto the bike trail for the residents of the 10 units that we're proposing building.
You're not, from the drawing that we're looking at, the site plan, you're not doing away with Central Avenue. You're just modifying it. So he still has access along Central Avenue, so you're not really taking that away from him.
Well, I'm just wondering why you're changing that configuration. Why not keep it?
It doesn't exist.
The configuration that comes out to the trail and back and exits at that other location. Why do you not want to use that?
Because it doesn't exist. That configuration doesn't exist. The whole property is essentially paved.
I mean,
It's
shown on
a
the-
100-year-old paper trail. It was never.
So but we have in front of us a plan that shows lines on it.
Correct.
Can you explain that?
The lines being the road that we're proposing building.
Well, there's properties and that shape that. I mean, that road gives shape to properties, so I'm not sure I'm
Okay.
understanding.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is a legal opinion. What do we say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think his access in that easement is being restricted per that easement. I don't think that's, it's my opinion that they would still have the access that they're being granted. That's my opinion.
Okay.
I mean, my office can look into this further.
It probably would be a good idea.
Yeah, I can absolutely, we can look into this and I can talk to John about this, but I don't think that that's restricting the access that they're being granted.
But
He did just say that the access to that gate that would be there would be for the people in his 10 units. He didn't say that we would be allowed to cut, if, you know, maybe we'd be able to work something out
I'll
if
tell
we
you
could
what,
actually.
why don't you talk with him after the meeting? We're not making a decision on this tonight.
Okay.
Because there's too many
Is that
open
your primary
questions.
concern, is access to the trail, or do you have additional?
Well, there's other things too. There's people that do park along the side of the road here.
Well, that's a township thing.
Yeah, and the parking is tight on Highland Avenue. I do have a few more concerns too, if I can address them at some other time. But
Okay.
this was one that was really important to me, and
Well, I can understand that, it's changing.
well,
If you have additional comments, feel free to.
thank you. Yeah, the paving. One thing too is I wish that they would go out and stake out the whole property, so you can see exactly where the lots are on the property, and not include the road in it. Just show where all the lots are, and you'll see how the size of this property, how really small it is. It is a small property, and it is going to be tight back there. It does need to be cleaned up a little bit. I agree with that. And the other thing is if it does go through, maybe make it a one-way. Like that would be a better idea, to make it a one-way instead of having traffic going both ways. I'm actually going to lose a lot of my property, or a lot of the property along the side of my house here, that the folks have been using for 90 years. And there's a couple big trees in here that are the roots are probably going to be damaged on them. So anyway, I'll just leave
All
it at
right,
that.
I would suggest you meet with Mr. Smergen and voice your concerns and see what you can amicably work out.
Yeah, well, that's another thing with us is we haven't heard anything from anybody, so that's.
Well, I'm sure
part
that
of-
will change now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Nope. Okay. You want to have some comments on something?
I just have a question. We have a plan in front of us. There's sites shown on the plan. It was up there. And so those sites exist in the township right now, is that? And then they're asking to consolidate these, to eliminate all those property lines.
They're asking to eliminate property lines and merge them into a larger
Eliminating
lot.
tax parcels into one
Yeah.
tax parcel.
Yes, no, that
That's
I
what they're going to do.
understand.
So the properties, as they were shown on the older plan, exist in a map only. They aren't, in that format now, and they're merging the lots.
They're all existing lots now. Roger, are they all existing individual lots like they were shown?
Yes, and
They're just owned by the
they're
same
going to
owner.
consolidate the lots under this plan.
So they are
Correct.
current lots. It's not that they're
Yeah,
saying they
well-
don't exist. They do exist. They're
I know they
currently the
exist.
lots.
But there's not a house on each lot. And what they're doing is merging the properties, which is not that unusual.
Procedurally, is that a separate step? to
Oh, that's
lot
under the
consolidation?
subdivision
It's all
process,
one process.
which is what you're considering right now.
Okay.
And you have to file a property, what's the word I'm looking for? A plan showing that they're merged.
Which is the plan that's in front of you
It'll
tonight.
be, titled that way with the county.
So the pie-shaped piece that was labeled as 002 on the piece of paper that was taken down, which is the property of James and Anna Falcone, if they ever decide to develop that lot, it will also access this private road, is that correct?
Looks that way.
It looks like there's 8 existing properties and a hockey stick central deed. That's, what page is that? The second page in is the lot consolidation. No, there's another, there's one that's just lot consolidation. It's the second page of the packet.
So the lot you're referring to is the one that's just closer to Highland Avenue than the proposed property. Right, there would be a developable lot, right?
Right, that's my question.
Looks that way.
They don't know that.
No, I'm saying, what happens if someone builds here? They have to have access to it.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about that.
There's a no
Yeah,
structure.
because that deed probably says it's granted access also to that road.
Is there a structure on the Falcone property that's at the turn of Central?
No, there isn't.
Okay.
At this point, I would say we have to table it. Is there
move we
any other,
table it.
wait a second, are there any other concerns from the board, things that we should bring up that they can look at when they're going through this and make the decisions which way they're going to go with zoning and so forth? Because we can't really move ahead until the parking is nailed down and zoning and so forth, because we can't give a waiver on zoning.
Yeah, I would move that they meet with the neighbors. about the
Definitely,
street-
yes.
About the street widths and drives and access to the, also address the parking problem, which will then give them a new problem, which will be impervious, because when they move the houses back and get more, they're going to impervious. So, they may in fact have too many houses, and they may have to get rid of one just to meet the impervious, which will solve a lot of the problems.
Yeah, and honestly, I really do like that road configuration a lot better than what's being proposed.
It just may not work.
Well, it may provide what you need if it's less, if it's 9 houses.
I think that the plan has, is that a 40-foot road? Because you don't really need that.
I'm saying the configuration, not the width.
Okay.
Okay, so is there a motion to table at this
I
point?
move we table it.
Second.
That's
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, I think I misplaced my agenda. Here it is, okay. Any old business at this point?
No.
New business?
So we have some questions from residents in the township as to the status of the stormwater management plan that's been under revision. We want to find out when it's slated to be reviewed or put into act and what that is. If there's any updates on that.
Any updates on stormwater?
I'm sorry, the stormwater ordinance?
Oh, yeah, we just want, some residents have some questions about when that's going to be put into play, how that might affect this year's development, and when we can look to have some sort of plan in front of us to review.
It was in the, so several months ago, it was in the Public Works and Sanitary Sewer Subcommittee, and there was a draft, but there has not been motion since then. So I will talk to the manager to see if the board wishes to continue. Regina was there. We actually talked about this at Stormwater Management Advisory. So what were suggested were very good changes.
Yes.
Right, in that they helped our residents, and they actually got some credit for removing impervious, and it
Right.
wasn't onerous to make a small addition to your house. But at the last Stormwater Management Advisory Committee, we were just bantering back and forth, and my personal opinion was I think it's due for a rewrite. It's from 2005. It's a very good ordinance. I mean, it's a good ordinance, and it works. But that was 13 years ago. We've seen issues we need to deal with that, and we could bring it up to today's standards. We still have issues with impervious surface, porous surfaces. There's a lot of things that need to be addressed. So it really has not moved for some time.
How do we get it to move at this point? So,
I will, so I would go to the manager and ask him to talk to the commissioners, and then they could direct staff to pick this back up again and see if we wish to do surgical changes and edits or do a larger one, which would really be more encompassing. I personally think I think we're due for that. But one of the issues we ran into was once it's written, it is objective, but in writing it, it is very subjective. So Regina and I have very different thoughts on certain things. She's right, I'm right. She's not wrong, I'm not wrong. It's just different. So the board needs to give us the board would have to give us some guidance. Otherwise, as we go through each committee, everybody's opinion is, well, it's too tough, it's too weak, you need to do this. So that's one of the problems we run into in an ordinance. And former Commissioner Curley did give us some guidance on some of those things to say, hey, this is what we want to attack. But it's a big task, and without direction, you go everywhere, as you know.
One thing I'd just like to add is that Gannett Fleming did review and make recommendations that we were pretty much in support of, and so was the Stormwater Committee. And so I have no explanation for why we didn't move forward with those fairly simple, homeowner-friendly recommendations that would help the township when very urban sites are redeveloped, get a little bit more stormwater management on the plan. We're talking about things along Lancaster Avenue. And it would also provide the relief, I'm sure that you remember discussing, on things that are, storage we're creating that will never get used in a homeowner's dry well, something like that. So I would love to see the recommendations that were vetted enacted.
is it possible just to, I know rewriting an entire ordinance is really tough, and we have a township plan that needs to be rewritten, and probably as well too, but is it possible to just enact some modifications to it, just to start to help our residents to comply, because that's one of the biggest parts. I mean, it doesn't need to just, it also needs to be updated by the sense that there's a lot of ways to accomplish stormwater management, and some are friendlier to certain lots than others. And that's part of the update, is saying it's not all about the dry well. It's about other alternative measures that might be friendlier to the lot, friendlier to the wallet, and will make people more willing to comply, because people are not complying.
I concur, and that's why I think it needs to be updated, because there are different means and methods, and some we don't recognize as of right now. If you wish, so if the Planning Commission wishes, I will gladly, as your liaison, send to the manager and the board that the Planning Commission, wishes to have the 2005 Stormwater Management Ordinance rewritten, amended, but Gannett did a good job on what they did. Then the commissioners also made some changes, but it's been there, so it hasn't moved.
But now the township's asking. I had a phone call today about it. The residents are really asking now. So the word's out, and people want to see some adjustments. So I personally would love to see us make some changes. It doesn't have to be a complete rewrite. Just let's get with the times.
I agree with Liz that it wouldn't be a complete rewrite, just an enactment of those small measures, because that could be done in a relatively short time frame.
Yeah.
It would just be a matter of, writing them into the ordinance. If you were to start opening the whole ordinance up, we're talking 2 years
I'll never get
minimum.
done.
Well, and it's something, you are correct, but even those changes can take time, because as we go before each advisory board or even staff, there's going to be differences of opinion, so then we provide an ordinance change with everybody's opinion, which is fine. So I will pass on to the township manager that the Planning Commission would like to see edits to the Stormwater Management Ordinance of 2005, and he can bring that to the board.
I would actually say, and I agree with what both of you are saying, I think you're really tough on the private homeowner. And there's a few small things that could be done individually that will create some relief in the stormwater problem, but also create relief for the private resident. It seems that the big properties have lawyers and everybody to fight this, and they get away with things where the private homeowner doesn't. So why can't we just enact a few small things that'll give the homeowner a break?
And that's what was going with the commissioners. So we actually had a waiver request where, so a resident came in and they were ripping out their old driveway and installing a new, but their stormwater management had to be sized for all of that, right?
Now,
so
that's just ridiculous.
There's no credit.
Yeah.
So there's no incentive. So I'll
Right.
keep my other driveway so my kids can play hockey or I can park cars. So, I agree 100%. And Roger and I have talked about this for 5 years, all the different items. I will pass that to the manager for when he speaks to the board.
Great, thank you. Anything else on new business? If not, then the meeting is adjourned.